I'm going to start with a quote by a woman called Brene Brown that you might have seen a TED Talk by. She's an American research professor at the University of Houston, and she's been studying creativity for a very long time. And she said that unused creativity is not benign, it metasizes. It turns into rage, sorrow, judgment, and shame. And I've experienced those feelings quite a lot personally, because I have ADHD, dyspraxia, which is a special learning difficulty that involves kind of coordination problems with both kind of your body and your brain, as well as anxiety and depression that I think more or less are the result of both the ADHD and dyspraxia. And in terms of how I found out, I spent most of my life not knowing any of this because I think when you have these conditions and you have, really great parents and a really good schooling system, and you come from, a very privileged background, the way in which these problems present. So, for example, not paying enough attention. When you're a child, you have lots of kind of systems in place to make sure that your parents scold you, and then you kind of do what they tell you to. But then as I kind of grew up and went to university, that worked a bit less because the work got harder and my chaotic brain was less able to kind of cope with everything, but I didn't know it at the time that there was kind of a reason. So I kept thinking, if I work harder, if I try more, if I just start my work earlier next time, if I stop watching TV and procrastinating, then everything will be fine. And I had this wish from kind of when I was 14. And at 21, I was finally sat down with, after kind of getting into a lot of trouble at university, after being told things like I didn't belong at Oxford, by the principal of my college, after a tutor kind of told me that I would struggle in the real world because people wouldn't be paid to look after me. Luckily, I also had some really nice people, and a counsellor suggested, after listening to everything I said, that maybe I have dyspraxia and ADHD, which actually don't really have anything to do with your intelligence necessarily. They're just, they're more a difference in the way you think rather than a disorder. And so I went through that process, and it sounds very cliche to say, but it kind of felt like a rebirth, because everything I'd experienced I could see in a brand new light. I could see it wasn't me, it was my condition. I could see it wasn't because I was lazy. And I found out all this amazing information about myself that, so for example, when you have these conditions, it's sometimes harder to manage your emotions. And I had no idea why before that, I had no idea kind of where this anxiety and depression came from, but it was this idea of unused creativity. So the fact that I didn't know how to channel my interests into work when the work needed to be done, that resulted in kind of all this, again, chaos in my brain. So for example, when I was 16, I did an art GCSE, which I had lots of fun doing. I did all the coursework on time, but I'd stay up the night before to finish it, and wouldn't sleep for 2 weeks the whole time my GCSEs were going on. But then I had a timed exam. It came to the time when I had to finish the final piece, my painting, and I remember at the end of it, the teacher sat me down. She was confused. She was as confused as I was that I hadn't finished it, and she sat me down. I was in tears. She asked, she gave me 10 extra minutes, very illegally, and asked me, what's going on? Do you have problems at home? Is there something that happened? And I had no words. I couldn't tell her, and because I didn't know I had a problem. I didn't know that at that time I didn't have this amazing diagnosis that would have given me the vocabulary and also the context that I needed to understand that even though it wasn't visible, the problems definitely existed. And so I think the main thing is that after finding out the way in which my life's completely changed is that everything I do now, I'm able to kind of do it with the understanding of how I work. And so in the summer, I did this amazing course at Ready Podcast, and we'll be speaking later, but it was life-changing just because music has always been something that I've used to kind of distract myself from like the noise going on in my brain. So, you know, I've paid a lot of money to Spotify after I stopped doing illegal downloads. I listen to music constantly. It kind of gives me motivation to wake up. It's one of the only things I can look forward to that aren't like a useless pastime. It doesn't feel like procrastinating because you can do it whilst you're trying to do other productive things. But I was never able to kind of fulfill myself through music, I guess, because it always felt like in the future I would, you know, be able to use the ideas I had and create something, but I never felt able to do it in the present. But Ready Pop changed that massively because I went there, I showed up in the first week, on the first day, and you know, I was allowed to kind of pick up an instrument and just play it without any expectations, without having to do any sight reading, and also without any kind of, no one kind of expected me to do this much, and then when I was able to do this much, the whole time was trying to spend bridging that gap. I could just, you know, they accepted that I was here and I could just play something being at that level. And that's kind of a life-changing experience because you get to like feel like a real musician. There's no longer like a gap between what you're doing and what everyone else who, you know, to you seems normal is doing. And since then, I was able to pick up the drums also at Ready Pop every Friday, and it's just the funnest thing ever because it's like a very visceral experience, which with things like ADHD is actually very important because when you have all this stuff going on in your brain, you know, the idea of like mind-body connection, I had no idea what that meant until I found out about everything, and the drums are the ultimate mind-body connection. And the other amazing thing is that, you know, the fact that I listen to music all the time as a, you know, as an attempt at distracting myself from the negative thought spirals that come with the shame of having had all these conditions and having to deal with them. Well, now I can listen out for the drums in music every time I play, and there's drums in every single song, so it's just the way in which it's changed my moment-to-moment experience of living has been kind of untold. I'm very grateful for that. And in terms of what I hope everyone here can take away today, is just that if you see a girl of any age, of any intelligence level, who looks daydreamy, they're very quiet, so they don't look hyperactive. In fact, they might look the opposite of hyperactive. But you know, they seem kind of like scatty, disorganized, and what else? They're late to everything. It's not because they don't care, they don't reply to your messages, it's not because they don't care, but it's because they can't. And the idea you might have about ADHD, kind of the stereotypical image of like a hyperactive 5-year-old, that's not the whole story. You can kind of be the opposite of that and still have that same kind of fundamental difference in the way your brain is wired, the way your nervous system is wired. And so if this education was available to especially teachers or anyone who works with young people, actually grown-up people as well, because I know that people who have been diagnosed with ADHD at 40 has, you know, changed their lives, and, you know, like they cried about it and it's been incredible. So I think to be able to dig a bit deeper into these labels and see kind of the breadth of experience and the breadth of symptoms or like effects they have on people would be great. So thank you very much for listening.